Right, well, my first PowerPoint would have displayed a private conversation. I'm just going to, I've never really, I mean, I did it briefly in Cambridge last year, but I've never really sort of gone through the whole Liam Madigan thing, Adri, da. So I thought that it would be an idea to kind of, I need to speak up, okay. Sorry. Be an idea to sort of like go through that and how that sort of came about. Because everything you read in the paper is not always true. Although everything that Joni Walsh, you know, has ever said is absolutely spot on. So she's your go-to gal. Right, so an individual by the name of Adri van der Meer, who was branch secretary of Battle Branch, of my Bexhill and Battle CLP, put on Hastings Momentum group that the women's officer of my CLP is displaying the traits of a TERF. So he was challenged over that on this group. I wasn't a member of that group. And they, you know, people said to him, have you spoken to this person? You know, are you sure that they are her views? Blah, blah, blah. He didn't entertain that at all. He then posted that, that what I'd been saying on Twitter was in the public domain, but he could supply anybody, if they wanted to direct message him, he would supply them with evidence that I was a transphobe. So somebody direct messaged me on Twitter and sent me screenshots of what he'd posted, and at that stage I felt that, you know, I just laughed really. I felt that I didn't want to take the matter any further or have anybody speak to him or go and pay him a visit or anything. But I did speak to the chair of our CLP just to make her aware. I just won't touch it.
You can put it up and then it won't, will it?
I'll take the laptop now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just made the chair of the CLP aware of, you know, what had happened. So I'd been elected as Women's Officer in the July. This was the beginning of August, so I'd done quite well, you know, in 3 weeks to actually sort of, you know, rile people up. And that is all because I was talking about women and the effects of the GRA would possibly have on women. Being women's officer, I felt that it was my job, you know, in that capacity, yeah, funny enough, to, you know, have discussions with them and, you know, find out their views or whatever, or to even cover potentially what might sort of like happen. So Adri didn't like this, so then he colluded with an individual by the name of Liam Madigan. And Liam put in a complaint about me to my CLP, and I would have had a PowerPoint for that as well. And I won't read out the whole complaint, unless you really, really want me to. But it just, you know, it was from a 19-year-old man. It's boy. Well, I don't think we should, you know, he's a 9, you know, a lot of 19-year-olds are fighting for the country. We're in the Union Jack Club, you know. You know, I think we'd like to think of him as a child, that, you know, he is childish or whatever, but he's not, you know, and whatever he says about me, you know, being misogynistic, you know, being phobic or whatever, that's exactly what he is being, and that's exactly, he's, you know, projecting his own misogyny on us women.
Yeah, he's a prick,
lesbians.
basically.
He's a what?
He's a prick.
He is a prick, yeah.
Literally.
Anyway, he says on it in his complaint that he was directed to my Twitter account, and he was incredibly disappointed and upset to read that my Twitter profile has an incredible amount of transphobic and particularly trans-misogynistic posts. How she had made and retweeted, including accounts banned for hate speech. As I'm sure you know, I have to read this because it's just the arrogance of the boy, man. As I'm sure you know, the women's officer is supposed to represent all women, and he's put all in capital letters. And this behaviour is ridiculously unacceptable. Ridiculously unacceptable. I request you see about removing her from her post immediately and realistically suspending her from the party as her actions are clearly against Labour Party rules and attitudes. Failing this, I will take this matter further, including higher up in the Labour Party and outside the party. I have recorded lots of data, and what is put on Twitter realistically is there forever. This needs to be sorted as a matter of urgency. Please get back to me as soon as possible, explaining what your next steps will be.
Just drop everything.
I'll include a few screenshots, but appreciate there are in excess of 50 in the few months Twitter allows you to look back, July to September. A lot of it may be difficult to understand without context. However, in many, she hatefully misgenders significant trans activists like Jazz Jennings. I don't think Jazz Jennings can ever be classed as an activist, who has been openly trans since the age of 3 and is now in her late teens. So anyway,
take this seriously.
Well, but this, you know, well, this was back in
Sadly, some people did.
September, and look how far it's gone now. So, my CLP, the secretary, sent a letter back to Liam to say that because he wasn't a member of our CLP, that he couldn't bring a complaint against me, and that, you know, he was more than welcome to sort of like take it to the compliance unit or whatever else about me. So I don't quite know what happened then. I was then half expecting that the Labour Party would have contacted me to say that I was now under investigation, and that didn't happen. I was advised to put in a counter allegation of bullying and intimidation by Adri van der Meer, which I did do, and I submitted to the Labour Party compliance unit in October last year, October. Well, just after party conference, so the end of September, yeah. And I still have not had word of my complaint. So we're now, you know, May. I've now forwarded my complaint to do with Adri, who then was only suspended. And that was only because he was sharing members' data on the secret Facebook group that Liam Madigan was one of the people who set up. So that's the only reason that Adri was suspended, not for all the other allegations and complaints against him, mine included. My complaint now, I was advised to send it to Anne Black, and Anne Black then said I'll send it straight on to Jenny Formby. If you don't hear anything from Jenny Formby in a couple of weeks, then here's her email to chase her up. Well, surprise, surprise, I've not heard anything. And I really don't expect to. You know, I've been blocked by South East Labour on Twitter, Hastings, Labour, Momentum, you know, I've just been painted as a an iconic transphobe along sort of like the south coast and beyond. So what about little Liam? Well, he states, amongst other things, that he's a lesbian. And, but he knows he's not a lesbian because he knows he's not a man. You know, he knows he's not a woman. Sorry. 5 minutes. Sorry. So right, he states he's a lesbian, but he can't be a lesbian because he's a man, and he knows that he's a man. He knows that he's not a woman, and he's got no intention of ever being trans anything. You know. This is all sort of a game to him. He's a charlatan, he's a narc, he's a fraud. He hates women and he hates lesbians. And the people that, you know, particularly the sort of like heterosexual men that sort of like follow him or whatever are gamps, who, you know, gamps. Oh, we'll talk about gamps after. I can't really. But it's yeah. So, you know, he hates women, he hates lesbians, and he is being pushed along by the likes of Heather Peto, who is another nasty individual who claims to be a lesbian, and claims to be a woman. There's a bit of a trend,
isn't there? Hacked for 15 years.
States what?
Claimed his live journal was hacked for 15 years.
Yeah, bless. But you know, Warren, bless him, was, you know, a bit of a mediocre man who stood for as a Labour Party candidate as a man and didn't get anywhere. So then sort of like sticks on a dress and thinks that you know that there is a way in, and unfortunately there is a way in, isn't there? You know,
Via the Joe Cox programme.
By the Joe Cox programme. And then we have Sophie Cook. Sophie Cook, who you know, claims to be a woman, and I don't know whether Sophie. I don't know what Sophie's real name is. So, but claims to be a woman. I don't know whether he claims to be a lesbian as well.
He's a sports photographer who has no GRC. He actually stated that when they put him up for
I know,
election in
well, none of them
2017.
have, nor
Won't have
has
one on
Warren.
principle.
Can we just have the speaker speaking, please?
So, Sophie Cook, the Labour Party is absolutely hell-bent on getting a trans woman into Parliament. Sophie Cook was rejected in Shoreham and Worthing because of financial inaccuracies. They then got advice as to what they were going to do to proceed, and the NEC overruled that, so reinstated Sophie Cook's as a candidate, and in that decision then prompted two of the local councillors, Becky Cooper and Catherine Arnold, to drop out of the selection process in protest against the Labour Party, who are now unsure as to how they're going to proceed with a candidate for that area. I mean, I don't know how you sort of like follow on sort of like Twitter as to what's going on with the likes of Ruth Hunt and Stonewall, and how Stonewall are very much on you know, the trans train, and have very much left lesbians behind. And there's an awful lot of talk at the moment as to, you know, the L should be removed from the LGBT, or the T should be, you know, cut adrift, and you know, and I would like to sort of like know how we would go about that, of getting the L removed, because I don't think any of us should be a part of this awful misogynistic erasure of women and lesbians. You know, men have reinvented themselves, haven't they? You know, women, heterosexual men, even used to come on to me, oh, and you've not had the right man, have you? You know, and, you know, what I can do with my cock, you know. But it's far worse now, isn't it? You know, it's far worse. You know, it's not just straight men that, you know, get a bit pissed up and then think that, you know, that they can come on to you. It's these, you know, men that are putting pressure on young lesbians particularly to sleep with them, to try and convince them that, you know, penis is female. So they have reinvented themselves, and, you know, they've, since the beginning of time, men have, you know, wanted to infiltrate lesbians, you know, and, you know, men through the centuries have always used a penis as, you know, as a weapon of power. And, you know, like I said, this is something that, you know, I speak to a lot of people that have never seen anything like this, you know, through the sort of like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, nothing like this at all. And this really is war, and this really is erasure of lesbians and women. And I can't really, yeah, I can't really say any more than that really, but yeah, I'm sure the rest will. Anyway, thank you very much for listening.